Good morning. We would love for everyone to have a seat. I know some of you are coming and going if you're on faculty, but everybody else that's a guest, it would be great if everyone kind of had a seat. Oh, did I look joyful? Yay, welcome back. I'm excited. And it's also the last day for break, so I'm really excited. So this is one of our favorite things we do every year. It started out with just having a few come to my Tuesday mornings with Macedo, and then we've opened it up to invite any parents, but then we realized primarily this would be so super valuable for juniors and seniors to actually be able to ask the questions. So this is our second year of having the students in here, and hopefully those of you that were here as juniors, seniors, you enjoyed it last year. New group of students. We try to mix up our panel every couple years so you can hear a variety. Mr. Weichbrodt will actually be doing the moderating of the questions this year because I thought I might be too distracting. And he's actually a little bit better at it than me probably too. But, so we will get started, and hey, heard that. But we will get started in just a minute. Parents that are here, thank you for joining. There will be opportunity for parents to ask questions too, and I know parents are going to be flowing in and out as they have little parties downstairs and stuff, but we've invited all parents to come and go. Primarily, we want to make sure that you, juniors and seniors, get your questions answered, and then we will have parent questions, and usually even the faculty I know has some questions, so we'll give them an opportunity to ask you some questions as well. So again, thank you for being here. I know it's earlier than the brunch, so we appreciate you getting up early and getting here, and let's go ahead and pray for our morning. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for our school. Thank you that we have so many years of alumni now. What a blessing. Thank you that their willingness to return and share with our juniors and seniors. Lord, thank you just for our faculty, our students. Most of all, thank you for the birth of your son, Lord, and that we can celebrate it. Thank you for our school that we go to that allows for that, Lord, that we can just honor and bless one another through today. Lord, we just pray your hand over all the activities, the calm to the crazy, Lord. Keep everybody safe during all of our games. And we just ask you to bless our break. Lord, I pray for just some great quality time with family and friends and an opportunity for our students and our faculty to rest, Lord, and prepare us for our last couple of weeks of the first semester. We give you this morning, Lord, and we just ask you to bless our time. In your name, amen. All right, Mr. Weichbrodt has been on our faculty for 13, 12, 13, 14, 15, forever. And he is if you don't know, Mr. Weichbrodt is our humanities department chair, and has everybody in this room had Mr. Weichbrodt? So everybody, I think, we've pretty much copied. So do not worry. He is not asking the questions, so you don't have to be nervous. Matthew! Hi! It's like just you pray, and the Lord just, brought Matthew. You should probably take the mic from me.
So we're going to get started with asking all our different alumni panelists to introduce themselves briefly. I'll ask them to share. We'll just kind of go one by one, and Matthew, since you're here latest, we can start with you. Tell everybody your name, where you went to school, and if you're beyond school, what you're doing now. But also tell us when you graduated from Trinity and what are the kinds of things that you did while you were here at school, clubs, extracurriculars, that kind of stuff.
So my name is Matthew Ariave. I graduated here in 2015. I did a bunch of different stuff. I played basketball every year. I was on the worship team. I don't know if any of you were here when we were leading worship over here. Let's see. I went to Westmont. I went for 3.5 years, and I finished in 2018. And now I'm at Pepperdine at the grad school for business. And I just finished my first semester. It was super intense, but good. Grad school's good. And let's see. I'm also working full time, so it's pretty exhausting, but super worth it. And I'm married, yeah.
My name is Grace. I graduated Trinity in 2015, and I was involved in cheer and YAF and a few other little things while I was here. I went to Cal Baptist and graduated in 3 years with a major in liberal studies and a concentration in math. And now I am working at Crossroads Community Church just down the street, and I am the Grow Ministry Assistant, which is pretty much planning and coordinating all of the ministry for discipleship, so men's, women's, and that sort of thing. And I am also married to Colby. He graduated in 2015 with us. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I graduated Trinity in 2016. I was a member of the swim team. So any swimmers here? Oh yeah, let's go. I also attended a couple of YAF meetings, and that was super fun. And a couple other clubs here and there. And I am currently at Hillsdale, where I'm minoring in history. And I think that's it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. I graduated in 2015. I was part of the cheer team as well. I was also part of YAF. I was a Dante, for all the Dante people out there, I was a Dante House representative for 2 years. I think I was part of other things as well, but it's been a few years. And then I went to the University of Florida. I just graduated in May with a degree in telecommunications and an outside concentration in sports management. I currently work at ESPN, and I recently placed top 10 at Miss Connecticut USA.
Good morning, I'm Caden. I graduated Trinity in 2017. Primarily played football and basketball, kind of spent my time doing that. I'm currently in my 3rd year at the Air Force Academy, studying computer science.
Hello, my name's James Brooks. I graduated from Trinity in 2012. I played basketball, football, baseball. I did worship bands. I was the first captain of Patrick House. I went to the King's College, graduated from there in 2017, and now I am a contracts negotiator at Lockheed Martin.
Good morning. My name is Nick Spinello. I graduated Trinity in 2014, which is a while ago. While I was here, I played football, soccer, basketball, and baseball, so I beat James Brooks on that one. I'm not married, and I went to West Virginia University, and I graduated in 2018 with a degree in industrial engineering. Currently, I work for a company that works with Amazon as an engineering manager for them.
Hi, I'm Donnie McAdam. Excuse my scratchy voice. I'm getting over a cold. I went here and graduated in 2013. I played sports. I was the Cincinnati house captain. There we go. Nice. And I went to Azusa Pacific University. I majored in English and philosophy. I graduated in 2016 and kind of stuck around and finished a master's degree last week. So I work for their writing program currently as a writing consultant and also teach rhetoric to their honors college freshmen. So for the future, I hope to kind of continue doing school and get into a doctoral program and kind of pursue that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I graduated in 2017. Sorry, I'm also getting over a cold. I was on the golf team, and I restarted the mock trial team. I don't know if it's still around. I'm currently in my 2nd year studying at Princeton. I'm studying computer science.
So students especially, this is a time for you to start thinking of questions that you have, and as you have them, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over to you. Our goal is for maybe a few of these panelists to be able to answer or address your questions. But I'll start with one since the topic came up. So Matthew, Grace, James, you all are married and you married somebody that you went to high school with. Is it a waste of time to date in high school?
I would say it depends on the person. Colby and I loved meeting in high school and dating in high school, but we also, when we were dating in high school, were very serious about it. We knew we weren't just dating like to have fun necessarily or for the relationship or the title. We knew we were serious about each other. And with that, we went to separate colleges, which I think was really helpful for us because we were able to grow our own college lifestyle without leaning totally on each other. And we were able to go to church together at a church between our schools. So we were still really close and able to see each other a lot without being overly, like we were able to have our other friends too. So anyways, I think the foundation that we had at Trinity was a really good start for us to grow our relationship through college and then get to where we are now.
Yeah, I would say it's super important to, even when you're in a relationship, whether it's in high school or college, like stay focused in whatever else you're doing, the other activities, whether that's work or if you're in sports, focus on sports, and obviously your education. And I think Kayla and I, she'll be here in a little bit, I don't know where she is right now, but wherever we were, because we went to the same college as well, we stayed really focused in our lane so that we could finish early and do well in our academics. So no, it's not a waste of time, but it really can be a waste of time, depending on how you approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it would be a waste of time, but for Beth and I, we started going to school together in 6th grade, so like we weren't dating in 6th grade, but we were definitely good friends before we even had any type of romantic interest, and that I think has been one of the strongest foundations in our relationship. So then we ended up dating towards the end of high school, had our ups and downs, broke up and stuff, went to different colleges, eventually got back together. I transferred schools to go to school with her because our relationship was that important. So I think that it's not exactly the dating specifically in high school that's important, but just having the foundation of being, if you have someone that you're interested in, like just being really good friends with them and then going from there.
Juniors and seniors, what questions do you have?
What would you say was like the hardest part of transitioning from high school to college, and how would you say that it kind of shaped your character to who you are today?
So for me, I went across the country. I went to Florida for school, and going from a small, close-knit community like Trinity to going to a school with over 50,000 students, that was a big transition for me. But I think my education here, and as well as my family, really set the foundation for me. I knew what I wanted, and I had a direct path. And so my first step when I came to Trinity, or when I went to Florida, was I wanted to make myself stand out amongst 50,000 students. So I got involved immediately. I joined a sorority my first couple days on campus, and I started joining a bunch of clubs and organizations, and that's how I ended up finding my passion in the career I wanted to pursue. So my biggest advice is get involved as soon as possible. Go to a school that has a myriad of opportunities for you so that you can find your home at the school that you choose to go to.
Yeah, I have this. Whoa. That's really loud. I have a similar experience. So I went to West Virginia, completely across the United States, to a huge school. Not 50,000, but it's 35, so still pretty big. But when you're there, one of the nice things about Trinity is, so you have this experience right now, right? Your entire class is here. You get to come and listen to us speak. In college, you have the same opportunity, but it's up to you to go. It's not required for you to go. And so when you take the initiative to attend stuff like this or go try something new, that's what really sets you apart. So for me, it was trying different engineering paths. So I originally went in as a mechanical engineer and found out that wasn't the path that I wanted to pursue, but I never would have found that out if I didn't go to something similar like this and someone told me about that type of engineering. So it's really about the initiative that you take and trying new things.
I'll keep going off Nick's point of initiative. I think that when you're in high school, a lot of it is prescriptive and you're required to meet with people at certain times. However, in college, it's not so much that way. But the opportunities presented to you are also, so like with the increase of initiative required, the increase of reward is also available. So you have professionals that are in your field doing the things that you want to do. Seek them out and figure out what they did to get there and try to copy it as best as possible. That's what I've done, at least, is find a few folks that have done something that I would like to do very well, and then pick their brain as much as they'll let you, and emulate it as best as possible.
I would say one of the biggest transitions is when you get to college, you first realize how small of the bubble is that you're living right now. Even at a military academy where I would think that everyone thinks kind of the same sort of way, I meet people every day that have a completely different background, a completely different train of thought, believe a completely different thing than I did. And here, you're around a lot of the same thinking people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at this point in your life. You want to build that foundation so that when you go to college and you're dealing with all these different kinds of people, you're strong enough in your own beliefs and in your own way of life to be able to have real conversations with those people. So that's why I think it's important that, you know, we have classes like apologetics. There's a little plug for you, Dr. Dixon, in the back, to sort of think about those things. And that's going to be a huge shock to a lot of you of like, wow, I'm not around the same kind of people all the time. It's okay to have friends that aren't necessarily believers. I have tons of them at my school, and you know, we talk about those sort of things. So just be ready for that shock.
So I was a first-generation college student in my family. I don't know if there's anyone here who has that similar situation, but going to college is extremely, it's a foreign concept. You know, there wasn't much to context to get from talking to my parents, as supportive as they were in every single way. There just wasn't that aspect of advice of you should do this, take these classes. So really seek out your academic advisors, and from a professional perspective, like what Donnie was saying, really get to know people in the field, especially alum from the school that you end up choosing. That's the way you're going to end up getting good connections to a good company, a good job. You're not just going to get hired eventually out of college just because you did well in school. Like, you got to make good relationships while you're there as well.
Our next question is from Corinne.
Okay, did you ever deal with burnout in high school, and do you wish you would have stressed less?
No, I wish I would have stressed more. But some people may have had a different kind of outlook on high school academics. I kicked into gear a little bit late. But I would encourage you all to kick into gear as early as possible.
So the transition from high school to college academically is a complete 180, and that's not something I anticipated. So being at Trinity, you're forced to, like, we have high standards, and you have to meet those standards, and there's thesis and tests and APs, and it's a lot, and I get that. But being in college, you're not forced. No one's checking in on you, making sure you're taking notes in your books or checking on your math homework. But if you don't do that, you don't have those practices in place, you're not going to succeed academically. So that's something that I really appreciated from Trinity, is that I was able to get those habits in place, even though it could have been stressful and there were times that it was really hard. But it helped me succeed so much more in college, and looking to peers that were in college, they didn't have that background and they didn't know how to take notes and how to read, and they didn't have that discipline, where me and some other friends that I went to CBU with from Trinity had that discipline, and we were able to succeed right off the bat. Instead of having a semester or two of like, oh shoot, what am I doing? We were able to step right into it. So I think it's helpful.
In most situations, I think, too, in college, there's plenty of time to do the work that's asked of you. The myth that there's not is not accurate, pending that you're not working several jobs. But if you're just going to school and your job is being a student, there's plenty of time to get things done. It's just about how you manage that time and whether you want to spend that being deliberate or otherwise.
I do want to follow up a little bit on Corinne's question and maybe alter it a little bit, but kind of go in the same direction. From the perspective of being on the other side of high school, what are some things where you felt like you invested all this time, energy, emotional investment, and looking back, think like, I didn't need to worry about that. That wasn't nearly as important as I thought it was. Maybe some of those, whether or not you experienced burnout, some of those same kinds of feelings of exhaustion or frustration. What can you see now in terms of what you didn't need to prioritize or invest so heavily in?
So I don't know if it's the same now as it was when we were in school, but I remember when we were in school 2015, we had 0 periods still, which I think has shifted a lot. But looking back, that wasn't something that was necessary where I thought, I have to take a 0 period, I have to be house captain, I have to do cheer, and I have to be cheer captain, I have to do all these things so that I can get into a good school and succeed in school. And in reality, nobody knew, like, what does house captain mean? Or what time did you take your AP class? Was it at 7 a.m. or was it just a different class during the day? So I think picking and choosing, like, a lot of those things are important, but you don't need to do every single thing, which is something that I did and probably wasn't necessary.
I think that a lot of the stuff that you're doing in high school right now is really setting that foundation for what you're going to do in college. And everything that you do in college is setting the foundation for everything that you're going to do outside of college. One of the things that I think I spent too much time on was worrying about a bad grade. Like, one bad grade is not going to shape your entire future. That's the same thing in high school. That's the same thing in college. So everything that you do there, the activities that you do, the time that you spend, if it's good and it's building you up as a person, then continue doing it. But worrying about the past, it's the past. It's there. It's not going to change. But it's everything that you do after that. So that's probably the one thing for me.
I would just add that, yeah, I mean, there definitely were times of big stress, but once you get to college, you start realizing that you were prepared so well in terms of like class discussions and essays to where college is hard and you will be challenged, but you almost have like when you lift a lot, when you work out a lot or you train a lot in your sport and you end up performing in the game, it just comes a lot more naturally. I wouldn't say easier, but it's more natural. So yes, writing a lot of papers can be exhausting, but when your professor says, okay, you have an 8-page paper due by the end of this week, and everyone in the class is like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna do that? But you're like, oh, we did that all the time. Like that's something I can crank out in one night even. So yeah, you're being well prepared. Let's just say that. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm not an easily stressed person, but so in high school, I wasn't too worried about, I mean, I wanted to do well, but I wasn't super worried about getting a 4.0 or things like that. But what I was more worried about in high school was things related to like sports. I knew I wanted to play sports in college, and so I was always kind of stressed out about trying to find the right school based on the sport that I wanted to play. And the way things worked out for me, so I ended up going, I initially went to school at Hillsdale College, played football there for 2 seasons. My first year, I tore my ACL, missed the whole season. The next season, I was kind of trying to play catch up. Eventually, I ended up transferring schools, not really related to the schools or the sports stuff, but more with my relationship with my wife. Wanted to go to school with her. I ended up playing basketball there, had a great career playing there. Things just worked out. And so, like, what I would say is, don't stress about anything if you can not stress about it. But like, don't worry about, you're not really in that much control. You can control what you can control. With sports, put yourself out there, email coaches, contact coaches, go to camps, things like that. But God's gonna put you where He wants you to be, and just go along with the ride, kind of.
Going off of what James was saying, I think the thing I stressed out about most in high school and it even transitioned into college is just worrying about things that are not in your control and just trusting in God and trusting in the process. I think a lot of times when I was going through the whole college application process, studying for the SAT, I took the SAT way too many times because I was so stressed about getting the highest score. I think I took it 8 times, and you shouldn't ever take an SAT 8 times. And I sacrificed my entire summer going into my senior year of high school just studying for the SAT. My classmates will know that there's a person called Debbie that I spent every single day with. If any of you guys are working with Debbie, you guys know. But I don't regret that. I don't regret that I worked really hard. I don't regret that I did all the things in high school that I did. And even in college, I was very involved in college. But that set me up for my job I have now. I don't think I'd be where I'm at today without all the extra work I did and just putting myself out there, making those connections, networking. You really have to put in the effort. And if you know what you want to do now in your career, start doing it. I changed my major or my career path a few times, and I don't regret that I did that because all those things were good and it did prepare me. And I know that now that I look back at it, God was preparing me for this moment and for this time. So just enjoy the process. I don't think I enjoyed a lot of the process, and I ended up loving my senior thesis topic, but if you asked me in February how I felt about my senior thesis topic, I didn't like it. But I look back at it now, and I look back at that experience, and to even talk to classmates in college and just being like, oh yeah, for my senior year, we had to put together a thesis on a controversial topic within the Christian community, condense it down to 6 pages, memorize it, and present it in front of an audience and a panel of judges. They were like, what? You actually do that? I'm like, yeah, we all did that. And that's a really cool process, and that was a really cool opportunity. Or the fact that we went to Italy together. Just enjoy the moments, enjoy the process, and if you know what you want to do, and even if you don't know what you want to do, work hard and just trust in God.
How many of you guys are seniors? How many of you have your senior thesis topic? Okay, so it's late in the year. You guys all have it. Use your advisors. Use them as much as they'll let you. They're a really great resource, and I know some people use them more or less than others. They're given to you for a reason. That's my biggest, I think, stress relief, maybe anxiety relief comment about senior year of high school is to use those who you've selected to kind of be at your aid and really take their advice seriously and let them kind of guide you along this path. Most of them have done something along this scale, so use them as much as they'll let you.
Other questions?
What were your guys' biggest concerns before going to like college, besides academically? Like, not about the work, about the this shift of what you're gonna study, but more like emotionally, maybe the friendships you're gonna make, sports.
For me, it was going to someplace like completely brand new. So I can tell you right now, West Virginia is nothing like California. Yeah, surprisingly, right? So just that in itself was just a giant culture shock to me, was preparing for that. So thinking like, I'm gonna meet new friends, I'm gonna meet new people. Surprisingly, I have very few friends from West Virginia, but actually more friends from Florida, Georgia, New York, like all over the place. So you're gonna meet people from all over. It's taking that time to actually go out and meet people. So like somebody had mentioned earlier, like you're surrounded by the same, 25, 30 people almost every single day. Like you know everybody by name. You're about to go into a place where you don't know everybody by name, and you're gonna start meeting new people and doing that. So that was the biggest shock for me, and then also the classes. So right now, you guys have the opportunity to ask questions, get answers, be taught by a professor. Later on in the future, you might not have that luxury. So kind of walking into that atmosphere was a little different for me, was trying to seek out the professors myself rather than being able to have, raise my hand and ask a question in the space.
Money is my answer. I don't know how many of you also share that concern, but when I went to college, I was very concerned about how I was going to survive financially. And there's plenty of opportunities and ways to do that. You just have to kind of get creative. I worked like 3 jobs regularly throughout college and graduated in 3 years. And still would say that I had plenty of time. I don't think I ever pulled an all-nighter. It's just about time management and figuring out creative ways to make your needs align with what you can or cannot do, and picking and choosing how you're spending your money / resources.
So on my first day of class, my professor told us to look at our resume and delete everything we have from high school. And that was my first day of freshman year. And so for me, I panicked immediately because I did so much in high school. I worked so hard to get to my school, and I was just told to delete everything I did because it will not matter anymore. And so my biggest fear in transition was, how was I gonna make myself stand out? I went to a school of 50,000 students, like I said earlier, and I came from a school where you had your friends that were involved in YAF, and they're like, hey, come with us to our meetings, or everyone wanted to be in part of the house captain or the leadership program. You were in cheer or some sort of sport that you were playing for years. That was something you always did, and you were always encouraged to get involved and do all these things. And you also had this pressure that you wanted to get into a good school, you wanted to get into college, so you were trying to get involved as much as possible. But when you go to college, and especially if it's a big school, there's no one to really tell you, like, hey, join this club, join this club organization. You have to go out there and seek those opportunities. And so for me, that led me to my first job as a radio host. And that propelled me in my career in sports media. So I guess going back to that is that get involved as soon as possible and try to seek out those opportunities, whether you go to a school of 500 students or you go to a university of 50,000 students. Just get involved as soon as possible and start, as we've been saying a lot, networking and talking to people. Even if you have the slightest interest in their field or their profession, just talk to them, get to know them. I became really good friends with my philosophy teacher my freshman year just because he had an appreciation for Plato and he was shocked I knew who Plato was. So just something like that, just make friends, make those connections and get involved and try to make yourself stand out. Doesn't matter how big or how small your school is, you have the opportunities at your hand to just trailblaze your path.
Yeah, so I went to school, both schools I ended up going to were out of state, and so my biggest concern, that was like a non-academic type concern, was making friends, getting to know people, things like that. Just being dropped in a new state that I'd never been to Michigan before I went to school in Michigan. So like going to a brand new state that I'd never been in, things like that. And I was lucky enough to be playing sports, so I kind of was able to have some friends very soon in my time there. So I would just say, like, if that is a concern of yours in going out of school out of state, I'm very happy that I went to school out of state. I got a lot of really good experiences. I know that, okay, maybe I don't want to live in Michigan because it's below zero in January or something like that. But so I'm happy I went to school out of state. And so I would just say, if you go to school out of state, do your best to just get into an organization that you're interested in, or try and get a small group of friends that have similar interests.
One of my biggest concerns going into school was knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I initially went to Cal Poly, and you have to go in declared there, and I thought I wanted to do one thing, got there, realized it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I was just forcing these, like, oh, I have to declare a major, I have to do this, when in reality that isn't necessarily the best path. So I ended up taking a gap semester, and then I went to a different school and went in undeclared, and that I think was the best thing for me because there is freedom to take GEs and figure out what is interesting to you. Do you want to do theology or this? Because you have to take those classes anyway. So you might as well take those classes, see what's interesting to you, and declare your major later down the road rather than feeling that concern of what do I want to do and declaring that right away.
Can I give you the best piece of college advice I can think of? Go to church. Whether you want to, don't want to, have found a church, have not found a church, find one locally and go to it. No matter what, no matter how you feel like it or don't feel like it. I would say that has been by far the most impactful add-on to my college/adult life. It's formative in ways that you may not even conceive of. So I'll do a plug for a book that you all should read as you're kind of thinking about this. You Are What You Love by Jamie Smith. It's a great book. Talks about formation and how behaviors kind of shape your identities in certain ways, and what you do tends to indicate what you love. So whether you move across the state or stay local, find a church that you can go to, and even if it's temporary, not the one that you think will be long-term, go to it and go to it religiously. As much as you can get that in your mind as something that will not fail no matter what. I'm kind of OCD, so like that's one thing that like erodes at my mind if there's even a possibility of missing it. But the sooner that you can get that mindset, I think the better. So that's my best piece of college advice for kind of ensuring your growth as both a human, student, everything. It also kind of combats this this bubble that's really easy to get caught into in college, where you're surrounded by people who are 18 to 22. And you don't want all your life choices and behaviors dictated by people who are 18 to 22. So I would say find a church. It gives you intergenerational community, and it's an experience that's very difficult to find anywhere else. And luckily, we live in a nation that is largely Christian, so finding a church should not be a problem.
So my biggest concern going into college was the fact that my best friends have been my best friends since day one of kindergarten. And how do you replace something so valuable as that? Or like, what do you even do when you're kind of plucked and then kind of thrown into the tundras of Michigan, where the town doesn't even appear really on a map? And you have to go on like dirt roads to get there. Like, what do you do with that? It definitely helped that I had a swim team, that it was super helpful, because there's nothing, I don't think, more bonding, I think, than doing a sport together. You always had someone to sit with. It was awesome, but I was still very, like, Hillsdale is very hard academically. I love it. It's a beautiful school. It's like incredible classes, but it's very hard. And so you will spend many a long night just studying all of the great philosophers. And I love every minute of it, but it's very hard. And I realized that I needed a greater community. So that's when, and then I woke up in the middle of finals, and I was like, okay, I can't do this finals alone again. So then I joined a sorority, and that completely changed my life. I had incredible experiences that I would never have had. I got to have breakfast with the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas because of it. I ended up in, and always, like, if someone gives you the opportunity, always take it. Even if you have a paper, the paper can wait. You'll remember that I had breakfast with the Supreme Court Justice, always. Or I went to CPAC, and I got to meet Ted Cruz, and he was like, oh, here's a pizza, you college kids. Let me tell you, let's talk about Hillsdale, basically. It was so cool. So just, like, get involved. I promise it'll be worth it.
I think one of the biggest changes you'll realize, if you haven't realized already, is in this environment, a lot of the choices you make are kind of made for you. When you go off to college, all of your choices will be your own. Unless you're living at home, of course, but literally anywhere you go, you will have complete control to do whatever you want to do. So that might be scary to a lot of you right now because you're kind of in this quote-unquote sheltered environment. But don't be afraid to get out. Don't be afraid to go meet new friends. Don't push them away just because they're not a Christian. Don't push them away just because they don't come from the same background as you. You know, you can do whatever you want to do, so own your decisions and don't be afraid to make new decisions, try new things, etc.
In terms of things that are like non-academic related, that was your question, right? Like what's something that was a stressor that we asked? Something that people don't really think about, don't really stress about, which I think that we really need to start thinking about as seniors in high school, juniors in honestly even younger, is just kind of making a wise decision about where you go to school. It's really easy to look at a tuition number and be like, oh, that's not a real thing to me. Like I can just choose to go to that school and somehow, some way it's gonna get paid off. Like, I don't know, I'm just gonna do well in school and it'll get paid off. But you really gotta be wise about what kinds of things you're signing. If you're doing loans, be very, very careful about what you're signing on to. Really look into scholarships, like any way possible. Like sign up for 1,000 scholarships, even if you get 5, it's so worth it. And so it's something that a lot of people don't stress out enough about. And you don't need to be stressed about it, but just prepare well because you hear stories all the time about people getting $200,000 degrees for like very low-paying jobs and not really careers that they wanted to do. So this is a little non-academic related. This is a little more financial related, but just be very wise and actually think about it. Like I'm not going to get into specifics right now, but think about it. Talk to your parents. Have really open conversations, and don't just like throw it up in the wind. Like, okay, $60,000 a year. Let's just see what that ends up looking like for me.
Our next question comes from Jocelyn.
Is there or was there anything that you were underprepared for or even unprepared for in college that you like weren't expecting to like be prepared for?
To always be busy, like no matter what it was, whether working multiple jobs, always doing homework projects, taking time for yourself, taking time to grow yourself, whether it's going to the gym, going to church, whatever it is. But keeping yourself busy and staying busy like that was something I never expected. Like literally almost every single day, every hour I had, let's say I had a metaphorical calendar, it was booked. And by doing that though, you take the time to really grow yourself as a person. So it wasn't something I was expecting. It's something definitely positive of it, but it was definitely a big surprise to me.
I think for me, I was unprepared to be taught by professors that didn't know me. So being at Trinity, I was, by the time I was a senior, Mr. Lee, Mr. Weichbrodt, Mrs. Massetto, they all had known me for so long that I didn't have to put in much effort to get to know them because we just knew each other from being around, from both of us being here for so long. And so understanding the importance of visiting professors in office hours so that they can get to know you, so that they know that you care about the class or that you want to do better. If you get a bad grade, going and seeing them to see why you got a bad grade, what you can do better, things like that. So I definitely would recommend to get to know your professors as soon as possible.
To piggyback off of that, if your school, my school was smaller, so you could take your professor out to lunch. If you could do that, really do that. I mean, again, the connections and the relationships that you make with people who are really successful, and your professors are probably pretty successful. I mean, at least in the business world, you get to meet professors that have worked for huge companies and had influence on a lot of corporations. And when you get to go out to lunch with them and ask them questions and just pick their brain, it's almost, you'll sometimes get even more out of that than what you get in one of their classes. But do both, and that'll really take you a long way. And professors have great connections to companies in town or just friends that they know that they can really plug you into. So if you can go out to lunch with your professors, even if they don't have a program, just do it. Ask them. Say, hey, can I take you out to coffee? I'd love to pick your brain. Take advantage of those opportunities.
I think in high school it's still possible to, quote, do it all, like academic, sports, extracurriculars, things like that. And I think in college I was unprepared or maybe didn't want to accept that that's not really possible anymore. Like just the amount of homework alone is kind of crazy. I realize that you have to, like college is basically, I think, a game of knowing what you want to prioritize and what you think is most important, because like I don't know if it's maybe your major or maybe the school, but at least for me, there's not really a way to do all your homework as well as you want to do it anymore. So it's just like if you want to join a club or if you want to, try something new, then I think you should go for it instead of being constantly worried about all the homework that you have. And it's definitely apparent. It's kind of hilarious to see the difference between freshmen and as you get older at Princeton, because freshmen are still like trying to hold on so tightly to everything that they're trying to do, and you kind of realize that you have to pick the things that you like the most and go with those.
I had a professor my freshman year tell me something along the lines of what Leslie's talking about. He said that you get to a point, especially as you kind of progress throughout your college education, where the amount of reading / work that's being asked of you exceeds the amount of hours in a day. So that being said, you have to become wise and figure out how to both allot your time and figure out which corners you can and cannot cut. And that sounds kind of contrary to maybe what you think so far. But it is a life skill. You have to, I think his exact words were, figure out a reasonable amount of time for work to do, and do that, and then don't do anything else. So I think that he was being a little bit silly about it, but nonetheless, I think his point rings true that you have to figure out like how to read and read quickly. Maybe you're not reading as deeply as you might if you're given like unlimited time. Unfortunately, in college, that's not the case. And especially if you guys go on to grad school, it's not the case. You have to learn how to skim effectively, how to So try to figure out which corners are cuttable and how to manage your time around those things.
I think I felt very unprepared at how competitive college is, and with that, how competitive internships and jobs are. When we were here, there's usually, if you're competing for anything, it's very small. You're competing against 25, maybe, and just one other person for an opportunity or a job. And I was applying to internships that over 1,000 applicants were applying to, or I was applying to be a part of a club or an organization, or even holding a leadership position where there's a lot more people who are applying there. And so I didn't realize how competitive it was. It was competitive, I think, for almost every aspect I was trying to get involved in college. And with that, going on in my professional career. So I think that was something that I wasn't really prepared for, but I think that because of the education that we have here, and that we learned to have like a drive and to have ambition and to just continue fighting. I think that was something that really helped prepare me for something that I felt unprepared for, if that makes sense. Depending on what career you go down, there will be a lot of people who are trying to apply to that job and not a lot of job openings. So that was something that for me that was very stressful, and that caused a lot of tears and just a lot of time where I just thought that this wasn't going to happen. Whatever I wanted an internship, I applied to, I think, 50 internships, and I only got one response back. And I think that was like the hardest thing to hear from, because here, if you get told no, you'll even have a teacher that might tell you, like, here's why we told you no. And in the real world, some of the times they won't even bother telling you why there's a no. And you might even email them and be like, hey, like, what can I improve on? I'm just trying to grow as a professional in the field. How can I do better? And you might not get a response back, and sometimes you will. But just learning to grow that thick skin. And that's not something that you might not get here at Trinity, but you can just, as a young adult, like, as an 18-year-old, being told no continuously, I think that was like the hardest thing to do, and that was something I wasn't really prepared for when I came to college, and as something I had to go on throughout college and even looking for a job.
So I'd add on to that. Sometimes the no's have nothing to do with you. So as you are applying to colleges, and you may not get into the school that you want to, or may not get into a school that you might want to go to, or whatever, keep in mind that admissions committees are very complicated. There's a lot of factors that go into deciding who they admit and who they don't admit, some of which have something to do with you and some of which have absolutely nothing to do with you. So try to, I guess, rein in your self-judgments when you are getting responses from colleges, and know that it's not always about whether you're qualified or not, right? So I mean, obviously there's the first wave of people who get removed from the admissions process who maybe aren't qualified, but then after that, it's somewhat of a preference thing, right? So your admissions committee is dealing with people who are all qualified, and they can only choose so many. So I would say don't be too hard on yourself in the face of rejection, especially in this phase where you're kind of willingly subjecting yourself to people judging you and your application.
I would add Trinity or high school and college you're very much honing in your skills, your personal skills, your knowledge, your wisdom. Like, those are the things you're building up in high school and undergrad. But once you go to grad school, and Frankie can attest to this, they're in the back, you're doing group projects and group presentations all the time. And I think I was so prepared for doing stuff on my own and doing things with people who thought very similar to me or had at least a similar work ethic. And when you get to grad school, and you're doing presentations like 2 or 3 times a week, you really need to learn how to work with people that may not work as hard as you, may not think similar to you. They might have very different styles, even of presentation. So learning how to like complement people that are very different than you in your groups, because that's ultimately what the real world is like. You're not working on your own all the time. I mean, maybe there are some jobs that are like that, but most jobs, you're a part of a team, and you need to learn how to work in a team, and so prepare for that. Yeah.
I think a lot of times you might find yourself that you're unprepared to know how to fail. I think in this environment, it's kind of hard to try new things. It's hard to kind of break out of your shell, and it's hard to fail in that sort of environment. But when you get out there and you're around all these different kinds of people, you start trying new things. You start going for these new opportunities that you're presented with, and you're not going to get all of them. But so what? You're going to learn the most from the times where you don't get what you want to do. You might realize that might not be what I want to do. There have been plenty of times where I've tried to do something. I've tried out for a club. I've tried out for an opportunity at the academy, and I've been told no. And in those moments, I've learned the most. I've learned the most about myself. I've improved the most. So don't be afraid to try new things. When looking at something new, you should never stop yourself from trying it because you don't think you can. There's nothing wrong with going for it and messing up. There's nothing wrong with going for it and being told you're not good enough, because then you can get better and do better next time.
Just piggybacking off of that, one of my favorite quotes is, failure does not define who you are, but how you respond to failure does. And so just don't be afraid of failure. Sometimes a no from God is an opening a door or an opportunity to something else. Just embrace that opportunity, embrace that challenge and that adversity, because that will create a myriad of opportunities. I wouldn't have the job I have today if I wasn't told no by 5 other jobs that I was just praying to God every day that He would give me, and I'm so thankful that I'm at the place I am now. And so just don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid. I was told by one of my professors that I would never have a job in sports media, and I've been told by so many guys, you can't talk about sports. You shouldn't be talking about sports. You're a girl and you don't play sports. And don't let the noise, don't let people telling you no, don't let that fear of rejection stop you from pursuing your dreams. So if you have something, go out there and just keep on fighting.
So we have about 15 more minutes. We already have 2 questions on deck, so if you do have a question to ask, make sure to catch my eye as we're going. I don't want anyone to lose the good stuff that we're getting for fatigue of sitting, so take 20 seconds and get your wiggles out, please.
I wish someone told me that. Someone told me you were going to be rejected.
You have 10 more seconds to get your wiggles out. And take your seats, please. And Ashley will ask our next question.
So, what were each of your senior thesis topics and like a piece of advice you'd give, especially for like delivery, I guess, of the thesis?
Mine was actually in relation to musical worship in the church and how churches should be teaching their congregation on how to participate so that people aren't just lost. I wish my topic was a little bit more controversial. I feel like it was a topic that just people are more apathetic to as opposed to controversial. But yeah, be specific about what you want to talk about, because my topic was a little wide open, and I had so many things I wanted to say. But if you're more specific, you can hit those points and be more controversial and get your point across. Yeah.
So my topic was the role of women in the church and women in ministry, which I love because At the time, I really thought it was something interesting, but didn't think it would take me down a career path, and now it's what I do every single day. So that's really fun, which I think my advice would be to pick something that you're interested in. Don't just pick a topic to pick a topic, but pick something that you might see yourself working in or have a future with, because now I use the information that I studied for that whole year every single day. And it was valuable information. And then I think the other piece of topic that's just a little bit more practical is to really pick good research books and people to talk to as your advisors, because there is so much wonderful information out there if you're able to take the time and seek out the good authors and the respectable people who understand the topic better than you do.
So my topic was rather heavy. It was about what happens when a baby passes away, basically, in a variety of different circumstances. And like I argue that they go to heaven. And I think it was a incredible experience just going through and just working through the theology, and then working through like, okay, how do you like, even like at a practical endpoint, like how do you help a friend who's suffering, or like how do you help a loved one that's suffering? And I think like the biggest tip that I can give you guys is just give yourselves grace. You are in high school. You will not. I felt like I was like, this is such a worthy topic. I'm not going to do it justice and stuff like that. But you know what? I did my best. And I think that's all you can do. So just like give yourself grace and know that you're in high school. It's okay. And so like, and that'll carry through in high school and like college, stuff like that. Like I've worked on some incredible papers and stuff like that where I'm like, it's just not good enough for this topic. It's really cool and it's just not good enough. And then my professor just sat me down. He's like, you are an undergrad. This is not your doctorate thesis. And just remember that.
I did mine on the hermeneutics of eschatology, which is just basically the different biblical interpretations of the end times. And so that was a fun topic. And I think that my biggest piece of advice is just to, like we were talking about, just use your advisors, use your teachers. I had Mrs. Van Dyck as my thesis advisor, and it was great because we were learning the different, and we were learning it together almost, and it was a really great experience because we were able to do that. But I also talked to Dr. Dixon a lot, and Mr. Richardson, and Dr. Selvey as well, and just used all of them as resources. I got a lot of devil's advocate played, and just do that. Go out to people, seek people who don't believe in the argument that you're fighting for, because that really helped prepare me for my refutatio and for even the defense after we presented our thesis, just because I knew what people didn't believe, and I knew the other side of it, and that really solidified what I believed, because I was presented arguments that people didn't agree with.
I talked about how a church should respond to depression. I think first of all, pick something that you love, pick something that you're actually interested in. And then second, as you're going through it, really pride yourself on becoming an expert in whatever topic you're talking about.
So I do want to move into more of a rapid fire round so we can make sure to get as many questions as we can answered. So panelists, maybe after 2-3 people have a chance to respond, we'll try and move on. If you really need to say something, then say it. Otherwise, we'll try and move with a little bit more speed. Our next question comes from Kyle.
How did you guys choose where you guys were going to college? Like, what factors influenced your decision?
For me, sports was the biggest factor. Sports and academics, but sports mainly. I knew I wanted to play football in school, so I put in, I think I applied to like 15 schools, emailed coaches, did all that stuff, and found the right fit. I loved the school I went to. And then ended up transferring, but knew I wanted to still play sports, so I played basketball and had a great time.
For me, it was the people that I talked to, so it was friends, parents, anybody like that I could surround myself and ask them like, hey, what do you do? Like, what's your daily job like? When I applied for schools, I applied from everything from graphic design to forensic science to engineering. I had no idea what I wanted to do until I got to school. Film too, yeah. So like, until you're in the moment, kind of experiencing the stuff for either the first time or really learning from experts, is when you'll kind of understand that. Building that foundation in high school, it's all about who you know. So if you're taking advantage of your friends' parents or maybe some of your friends or your brothers and sisters who are older, and you're asking them questions like, hey, like, what's your job like? What did you do in college? Asking those types of questions will really make you think and prepare for what you're about to step into.
For me, it came down to pretty specific things like location, size of the college, things like that. And I know when you are applying, it's really tempting to just like pick the school that, you know, has the best ranking or offers you the best financial aid. But I think it's pretty important to consider where you're going to be spending the next 4 years. Like, I know a lot of people at Princeton, they like don't really like the suburby feel of it, like because they came from cities or they wanted to be at a bigger school or things like that. So I think something that's helpful is ask people at the school what they don't like about it, and then you'll hear a lot of what it might be like day to day.
Kylie has our next question. Other questions? Does anybody want to interrupt before we get Edgar part 2?
To get more general to your concerns, failure in general, I know many of you struggling to that, going to college. One of my question is like, how do you get rid of that mindset or change that mindset into something that will help you be successful into what you're doing?
So the biggest thing that I have found is a lecture called Lecture Number 1. That's what my dad taught me. Whenever you have a bad race, you can either dwell on it and make it ruin the next one, or you can just like move on and just like swim your heart out the next time. Or like the same thing, like if you get a bad grade on your paper because the professor just hates your writing style, then you can go on and just like do better next time. So just like know that you will always have another race, you'll always have another football game, you will always have another paper, and just keep going.
I'll jump off of that. I think learning how to course correct is really important. So by that I mean, if you're going on a certain path, whether that be an exam or a paper or whatever, and you've fallen off course, you've gotten a lower grade than what you would have expected, figure out what caused you to fall off and adapt quickly. That's probably been one of my bigger tips for success for students that I deal with now and myself, is figure out kind of where your expectation didn't align with the professors and adapt as quickly as possible to limit damage. Does that make sense?
And this may well be our last question from Trevor.
So I know that for most of us that applied early this year, it's been pretty brutal, to say the least. Have any of you experienced that, at least when you were applying to colleges, as far as deferral or denial, and how did you pick yourself back up after that? And how did you improve your application to make sure that you might be able to get into that college or improve it so that you can make yourself better for other colleges?
Okay, so I was deferred from my first choice as well, so I know what it's like. I would say for that specific school, you could, follow up with them maybe in January and say that that they're still your first choice, even though I don't know, maybe it's not. And then update them with whatever else you've accomplished since then. I would say though, maybe not put your heart fully on that school and just kind of allow yourself to fall in love with other schools, research some other ones. Apply widely, I guess, is my best advice. And then, don't be afraid to let yourself become attached to the idea of going to certain schools, but just, apply widely, and then when the decisions come back is when, it all goes down.
I was also deferred and denied to what I thought was my first choice at the time, and to this day, I will tell you that that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. So just keep your head up and recognize that a door being closed might be the best thing for you, and the best actual school for you might still be out there.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody sitting up here that wasn't denied to a school. So it's something that you guys are going to come across. It's going to happen, but it's how you kind of pick up and move from that. And there's keeping your options open is probably the most important thing to do right now, whether that's what you're going to pursue or what school you're going to go to. For me, I never saw myself going to the school that I did. It was just one of the ones that I applied to. I knew was super interesting. I knew they had a good program for something I could be interested in doing, and it ended up being what I loved, or what I ended, like, the 4 years was great. So you might be surprised 5 years from now, looking back, being like, wow, I was denied from that school. You're still going to have a great experience. You're still going to challenge yourself. The name of the school sometimes doesn't necessarily matter. It's what you do during it.
I would say that it's really important to just take a deeper look at all of the schools that you have applied to or are thinking about applying to. I actually got into all of the schools that I wanted to get into and didn't even go to my top choice, just because later down the road I realized it wasn't the best fit. And what I thought was the best fit the summer of my junior year, a year and a half later, I realized wasn't actually what I thought it would be. So really just understand that you're going to be changing, the schools are going to be changing, and what decisions made now will later down the road probably lead to whatever the Lord has in store for you, and just have hope that He will provide what He has for you, and just keep your eyes on that future.
I would say, too, I alluded to this earlier, but don't take it personally. It sounds kind of aloof and like whatever, and I don't mean it that way. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of factors going into it, some of which have something to do with you, some of which don't. So when you get denied, who knows? No one knows. And I would encourage you to kind of keep that mindset and not take it so much as an evaluation of you as a human being, or your worth, or your intelligence even, or even your academic performance. Just know that there are myriad factors that go into that, and don't let it break you down. Coming from somebody that got rejected a lot.
On that note, let's thank our panel for being here this morning. Thank you.